Picture two men standing at opposite ends of the same room. One is tall, well-dressed, successful by any standard measure. He approaches women with rehearsed confidence. He smiles at the right moments, says the right things, and by the end of the night, he leaves alone, confused, wondering what went wrong. The other man is average in appearance. Nothing remarkable about his clothes or his status. Yet something strange happens whenever he enters a space. Women glance in his direction without knowing why. Conversations shift toward him. And when he speaks, people lean in. Not because of what he says, but because of something they cannot name. What separates these two men has nothing to do with genetics, nothing to do with wealth, nothing to do with luck. It has everything to do with a force that operates beneath conscious awareness, a force that philosophers have studied for centuries, a force that most men will never understand because they are looking in the wrong direction. Today, we are going to expose that force, not with empty promises, not with manipulation tricks, but with principles drawn from the darkest corners of human psychology. Principles that Schopenhauer warned us about, that Machiavelli weaponized, that Robert Greene decoded for the modern world. This is not comfortable knowledge. Most men will reject it because accepting it means accepting something about themselves they would rather not see. But for those who stay until the end, for those willing to confront what lies beneath the surface, everything changes. Let us begin with a question that will frame everything that follows. Why do women say they want one thing and consistently choose another? This is not a criticism. It is an observation that philosophers have made for centuries. Arthur Schopenhauer called it the will, a blind driving force beneath all human behavior. He argued that we do not want things because they are good. We call them good because we want them. And the reasons we give for our desires are almost always invented after the fact. This means that when a woman says she wants a kind man, a stable man, a man who treats her well, she is not lying. She genuinely believes this. But her conscious mind is not running the show. Beneath her words, beneath her intentions, something far older is making the real decisions. Schopenhauer understood that attraction is not a choice. It is a force that moves through us. And this force does not care about fairness. It does not care about what makes logical sense. It follows its own ancient laws. The first law is this: we do not value what we can easily have. We value what we must struggle to obtain. This is not cruelty. It is biology working through psychology. For thousands of generations, the things that were easy to get were usually low in value. Ripe fruit fallen to the ground, stagnant water, safety that required no effort. Survival depended on recognizing that anything worth having required effort. Risk, competition. This pattern is burned into the nervous system, and it expresses itself in attraction more powerfully than anywhere else. Robert Greene observed this when he wrote that desire is created by distance. The moment something becomes fully available, the moment all mystery is removed, interest begins to die. This is why the man who pursues too eagerly destroys his own chances. Not because he is doing something morally wrong, but because he is violating a law that operates below the level of conscious thought. The man who stands apart. The man who does not seem to need approval. The man who remains slightly out of reach. This is the man who triggers the ancient pattern. He becomes the prize that must be won, and the chase itself generates the very feelings that get called attraction. Here is the uncomfortable truth that most dating advice refuses to acknowledge. If you want a woman to value your presence, she must first wonder whether she has it. This sounds like game playing. It sounds manipulative. But consider it from another angle. When you pursue someone with desperate energy, what are you communicating? You are signaling that you do not have options, that your happiness depends on this one person, that you are willing to abandon your own standards to secure their approval. This is not attractive because it reveals a fundamental imbalance. You are telling her, through your actions, that she is above you. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, because love depends on the will of others, while fear depends on your own actions. In attraction, the principle translates differently. It is better to be desired than to desire, because the one who desires less controls the dynamic. This is not about becoming cold. It is not about pretending you do not care. It is about cultivating genuine inner abundance so that your interest in another person does not become desperation. The shift is internal first. The external results follow naturally. Over the next 40 minutes, we are going to break down 5 psychological laws that govern attraction at its deepest level. These are not tricks. They are structural truths about how desire operates in the human mind. Each law builds on the one before it. By the end, you will understand why certain men seem to effortlessly draw women toward them. And more importantly, you will understand how to embody these principles yourself. Not through performance, not through memorized lines, but through a fundamental shift in how you carry yourself through the world. The first law reveals why everything you have been taught about attraction is backwards, and why the harder you try, the more you push her away. In the 16th century, Niccolò Machiavelli observed something that would disturb comfortable thinkers for the next 500 years. He noticed that the appearance of power often matters more than power itself. A prince who seems strong will be treated as strong. A prince who seems weak will be devoured, regardless of his actual capabilities. This principle extends far beyond politics. It reaches into the deepest workings of human attraction. When you approach a woman with hunger in your eyes, with need vibrating through your body language, with desperation hidden beneath your smile, you are projecting weakness. It does not matter what words you use. It does not matter how clever your approach is. She is reading signals that operate below language, and those signals are telling her that you are not the prize. You are the pursuer, the supplicant, the one who needs something from her. Attraction reverses the moment this dynamic is felt. Schopenhauer described human desire as a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. We suffer when we want something we cannot have, and we grow bored when we have it completely. The space between wanting and having is where passion lives. Remove that space, and passion dies. This is why the woman who shows obvious interest too soon often finds the man pulling away. This is why the man who makes himself completely available finds her attention drifting elsewhere. The tension between wanting and uncertainty is not a bug in human psychology. It is the mechanism through which attraction is generated. Robert Greene called this the art of strategic withdrawal. He noted that powerful figures throughout history understood instinctively that presence means nothing without absence. Napoleon, Cleopatra, Casanova. All of them knew when to step back, when to create space, when to let desire build in the vacuum left by their departure. Consider what happens in your own experience. Think of someone whose attention you desperately wanted at some point in your life. What made them so compelling? Almost certainly, part of their power was that you could not fully have them. They remained slightly out of reach, slightly uncertain, and that uncertainty kept them burning in your mind. Now think of someone who wanted you more than you wanted them. Someone whose affection was freely given, easily obtained, never in doubt. Be honest about how you felt. Did their availability increase your desire? Or did it slowly diminish whatever interest you once had? You already know the answer. You have lived this pattern. The question is whether you are willing to apply its lesson. The first law of irresistible attraction is this: your value is determined not by how much you offer, but by how difficult you are to obtain. This is not about playing games. It is about understanding a structural truth that cannot be negotiated with. You can resent it. You can call it unfair. You can wish humans worked differently. But wishing does not change psychology that has been shaped over millions of years. Machiavelli advised princes to study history because human nature does not change. The same drives that moved people in ancient Rome move people today. And one of the most fundamental drives is this: we want what retreats from us. We lose interest in what throws itself at our feet. The practical application requires honesty about your own behavior. Ask yourself, when you find a woman attractive, what do you do? Do you increase contact? Text more? Seek more time with her? Try harder to impress? Make yourself more available? If the answer is yes, you are systematically destroying your own attractiveness. You are taking the very interest you feel and using it to push her away. The man who understands this law does the opposite. When he feels strong attraction, he does not amplify his pursuit. He steadies himself. He maintains his rhythm. He does not rearrange his life around someone he has just met. He does not flood her with attention. He does not perform. He continues being the man he was before she appeared, a man with purpose, direction, a life that does not stop because a woman entered it. This is not coldness. This is self-possession, and self-possession is the foundation upon which all genuine attraction is built. Epictetus taught that we suffer when we desire things outside our control. Other people's feelings are always outside our control. The moment you need a specific woman to want you, you have handed your peace to a stranger. And that neediness will leak through everything you do. The alternative is to want without needing, to appreciate without depending, to offer your presence as a gift rather than a request. This shift changes everything. Not because it manipulates her psychology, but because it actually makes you more attractive. The man who does not need approval has a different energy than the man who craves it. Women sense this difference immediately, even when they cannot articulate what they are sensing. Here is the truth, that uncomfortable to hear. She cannot want you if she already has you. The game is won by those who understand that pursuit and retreat must exist in balance. Too much pursuit, and you smother the flame. Too little, and you never ignite it. The master of attraction knows when to advance and when to withdraw. He reads the moment. He calibrates his presence. He never gives so much that mystery dies. And he never withdraws so far that connection breaks. This balance cannot be achieved through technique alone. It requires genuine internal stability, which brings us to the second law. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire at the height of its power. He commanded legions, decided the fate of nations. Yet in his private writings, he returned again and again to a single theme: control what is within your power. Release attachment to everything else. This was not passive acceptance. It was strategic wisdom. The emperor understood that a man who can be destabilized by external events is a man who can be controlled. And a man who can be controlled will never command true respect. In attraction, this principle separates the men who are chosen from the men who are overlooked. The second law is this: the man whose emotional state depends on a woman's response has already lost her. Watch what happens when most men encounter a woman they find attractive. Their behavior shifts, their voice changes, nervous energy enters their body. They begin monitoring her reactions, adjusting themselves based on her responses, laughing too hard at jokes that are not funny, agreeing with opinions they do not share, working desperately to earn her approval. She notices all of it. Even when she cannot explain what bothers her, something feels off. The man in front of her has revealed himself as unstable. His center of gravity has moved outside himself and now rests with her. And no woman wants to be someone's center of gravity. It is too much pressure, too much responsibility, too little respect. Freud observed that humans are constantly, unconsciously testing each other. We probe for weakness. We push boundaries to see how others respond. This is not cruelty. It is information gathering. We need to know who we are dealing with. When a woman tests a man, she is not trying to destroy him. She is trying to find out if he is real, if his confidence is genuine or performed, if his stability will hold under pressure. The man who reacts emotionally to tests fails them. The man who becomes defensive, angry, pleading, or desperate reveals that his composure was only surface deep. Beneath the mask, he is fragile. And fragility is not attractive. Robert Greene wrote about the importance of mastering your emotions before trying to master anything else. He noted that the greatest seducers in history were those who remained unruffled, not cold, not distant, but centered, present, unshaken by the storms around them. This quality is magnetic because it is rare. Most people are buffeted by their emotions. Reactive, predictable, easily provoked. The man who maintains his composure in the face of pressure stands out against this background like a mountain among hills. Consider what this looks like in practice. A woman cancels plans at the last minute. The reactive man becomes upset. He sends messages asking why. He tries to reschedule immediately. His response communicates that his evening has been ruined, that his emotional state depended on seeing her. The sovereign man responds differently. He says something simple. No problem. I will find something else to do. And then he actually does. He does not sulk. He does not wait by his phone. He redirects his energy toward his own life and lets her wonder what he is doing without her. This is not punishment. This is truth. A man with genuine options and genuine interests does not collapse when one plan changes. His life is full enough that no single woman has the power to ruin it. Schopenhauer argued that the will to life drives all human behavior. But he also observed that those who master their will, rather than being mastered by it, achieve a rare form of power. They are no longer puppets of their own desires. They can feel attraction without being controlled by it. This mastery is what women respond to, not because they want an emotionless robot, but because they want a man whose strength is real, a man who can handle pressure, a man who will not crumble when life becomes difficult. The test is always the same. Can you maintain your sense of self when someone you want does not give you what you want? If the answer is no, your attraction becomes neediness, and neediness repels. If the answer is yes, your interest becomes compelling, because it is freely given from a position of strength rather than desperately offered from a position of weakness. Here is the key that most men miss. Emotional sovereignty is not about suppressing what you feel. It is about not being controlled by what you feel. You can feel disappointed when she cancels. You can feel attracted when she looks at you. You can feel hurt when she pulls away. These feelings are human. There is nothing wrong with them. The difference is whether those feelings dictate your behavior. The sovereign man feels disappointment and chooses his response. He feels attraction and maintains his composure. He feels hurt and addresses it from a grounded place rather than a reactive one. This inner stability is developed through practice. Every time you feel strong emotion pulling you toward reactive behavior, you have an opportunity. You can act on impulse, or you can pause, breathe, choose deliberately. Each time you choose deliberately, you strengthen the muscle. Each time you react impulsively, you weaken it. Nietzsche wrote that those who cannot command themselves will be commanded by others. In attraction, this is literal. The man who cannot command his own emotions will find himself jumping through hoops for women who lose respect for him with every hoop he jumps through. Master yourself first. Then you become worthy of someone else's surrender. This brings us to the third law. Because sovereignty alone is not enough, you must also understand the power of what remains unsaid. Robert Greene studied power as a historian studies war. He examined the lives of those who accumulated influence across centuries and cultures. And he discovered a pattern that most people overlook. The powerful always maintain mystery. They never reveal everything. They leave gaps that others are compelled to fill. This principle operates through basic psychology. The human mind cannot tolerate incompleteness. When we encounter a puzzle with missing pieces, we become obsessed with solving it. When a story stops before the ending, we must know what happens next. When a person remains partially unknown, we project our fantasies onto the blank spaces. The third law of irresistible attraction is this: what you withhold creates more desire than what you reveal. This sounds counterintuitive. Modern dating advice tells men to be open, vulnerable, transparent. Express your feelings. Show your cards. Let her know exactly where she stands. This advice creates men who are immediately understood and quickly forgotten. The masters of attraction throughout history understood something different. Casanova did not win women by confessing his devotion. He won them by remaining slightly out of focus. They could never quite pin him down. And because they could not pin him down, they could not stop thinking about him. Machiavelli advised that a prince should be like a fox, not just strong, but cunning. The fox succeeds not through direct confrontation, but through misdirection, through appearing in unexpected places, through keeping others guessing about his true intentions. In attraction, this translates to a simple practice. Do not explain yourself completely. When she asks what you did last night, you do not need to provide a detailed itinerary. A slight smile and a vague answer accomplish more than a full report. When she wants to know how you feel about her, you do not need to spill your emotional inventory. A well-placed hint creates more tension than a declaration. When she tries to figure you out, you let her try. You do not hand her the answer key. This is not dishonesty. You are not creating a false persona. You are simply recognizing that mystery has value and managing what you reveal accordingly. Jung wrote about the power of the unconscious mind. He observed that much of what attracts us to others happens below the level of awareness. We are drawn to people who activate something in our depths, people who represent something we cannot quite name. The man who explains himself completely closes off this unconscious dimension. There is nothing left to project onto, nothing left to wonder about. He becomes known, and the known cannot compete with the unknown for psychological real estate. Consider how this plays out in conversation. The ordinary man talks about himself freely, his job, his opinions, his past, his hopes. He believes that sharing will create connection, but oversharing actually flattens the interaction. It removes the charge of discovery. The compelling man shares strategically. He offers fragments, interesting details that raise more questions than they answer. He changes subjects before fully exhausting a topic. He knows when to stop talking. He leaves her wanting more. And that wanting is the seed from which attraction grows. This does not mean being evasive or cold. It means understanding that tension is created by what is not yet known. Every piece of information you withhold is potential energy stored in the dynamic. Every question left unanswered is a thread she will keep pulling. Robert Greene noted that seduction is largely about controlling information. You reveal enough to intrigue. You withhold enough to captivate. The balance shifts depending on the moment, but the principle remains constant. Fascination lives in the gaps. There is a practical dimension to this that most men ignore. If you want a woman to think about you when you are not present, you must give her something to think about. Complete transparency gives her nothing to wonder about. She knows where you stand. She knows what you want. She knows how the story ends. So she stops thinking about it. Strategic ambiguity keeps her mind returning to you. Who is he really? What does he want? How does he feel? These questions occupy her thoughts. They create mental real estate that you own. And here is the deeper truth beneath this law. Mystery is attractive because it suggests depth. A man who can be fully understood in one conversation seems shallow. A man who reveals new layers over time seems endlessly interesting. You want to be the book she cannot put down. Not because she has finished it, but because she has not. Each chapter reveals something new. Each page makes her want to turn to the next. This requires having genuine depth. You cannot manufacture mystery if there is nothing beneath the surface. The techniques only work if they are revealing something real. Which brings us to the next law. Because strategic ambiguity must be combined with something more primal, something that speaks to the oldest parts of the brain. The fourth law is about the tension between masculine and feminine, the polarity that turns ordinary interaction into charged encounter. Get this wrong, and you become her friend. Get this right, and you become her obsession. Carl Jung spent his life mapping the hidden architecture of the psyche. He discovered that every man carries within him a feminine aspect he called the anima. Every woman carries a masculine aspect he called the animus. These internal opposites seek their external counterparts. The feminine within a man seeks the feminine outside himself. The masculine within a woman seeks the masculine in the world. This is why polarity matters so much in attraction. We are drawn to what we are not. We seek completion through union with the opposite. The fourth law is this. Attraction requires difference. The greater the polarity between masculine and feminine energy, the stronger the charge between two people. Modern culture has confused equality with sameness. It has suggested that men and women should become interchangeable, that masculine and feminine are merely social constructs to be discarded. But psychology tells a different story. Jung observed that the repression of natural opposites creates neurosis. When men suppress their masculine essence, when women suppress their feminine essence, something vital is lost, and attraction between them becomes pale, lukewarm, without the charge that comes from genuine difference. The most magnetic men throughout history were unapologetically masculine, not aggressive, not domineering, but grounded in a masculine core that expressed itself through decisiveness, direction, and unshakable frame. This is not about performing masculinity. It is about allowing your natural masculine energy to flow without apology. Consider what masculine presence actually means. It means having direction, knowing what you want, and moving toward it without seeking permission. Women are drawn to men who are going somewhere because it suggests protection, provision, purpose. It means making decisions, not asking her where she wants to eat every time, not seeking approval for your choices, deciding and being comfortable with leadership. It means being unshaken. When she experiences emotional turbulence, you become the stable point she can orient around. Not cold, not dismissive, but steady. Freud wrote about the psychology of the father figure. He observed that women, at an unconscious level, seek in partners certain qualities that represent security, strength, and authority. This is not about age. It is about energy. A man can be young and carry this energy. A man can be old and lack it entirely. The energy comes from internal alignment. A man who knows who he is does not need to perform strength. He simply is strong. His actions flow from his center rather than from a desperate attempt to impress. Schopenhauer argued that sexual attraction serves the will of the species. Nature does not care about individuals, it cares about reproduction, and reproduction requires that opposites attract with enough force to overcome the natural separation between self and other. This biological foundation explains why polarity creates physical response. When a woman encounters genuine masculine presence, her body responds before her mind can analyze. Her breathing changes, her pupils dilate, her orientation shifts toward him. This is not because he is manipulating her. It is because he is triggering an ancient pattern that her nervous system recognizes. He represents something her biology is wired to seek. The opposite is equally true. When a man is uncertain, approval-seeking, hesitant, deferential, he does not trigger this response. He may trigger other responses, friendship, comfort, but not the primal charge of attraction. Robert Greene wrote that we are all drawn to those who seem to live more intensely than we do. The man who inhabits his masculinity fully appears to live with greater intensity than the man who mutes himself to be more acceptable. Living intensely does not mean being loud or aggressive. Some of the most masculine men in history were quiet. They spoke little, but when they did speak, they spoke with certainty. When they did act, they acted with purpose. Every gesture carried weight because nothing was wasted. Here is where most men fail. They have been taught that masculinity is toxic, that strength is oppression, that leadership is arrogance. So they diminish themselves. They ask permission for everything. They suppress their natural direction. They become neutral. And neutral creates no charge. Attraction is electromagnetic. It requires positive and negative poles. When one pole weakens, when it becomes more like the other, the current between them dies. The woman in front of you does not want you to become more like her. She wants you to be different from her. That difference is what allows the charge to flow. Jung called this the sacred marriage, the union of opposites that creates something greater than either alone. But union requires that the opposites remain distinct. Merge them prematurely, and there is nothing left to unite. Practical application requires honest assessment. Where have you muted your masculine essence? Where do you seek approval rather than acting from your own judgment? Where do you follow when you should lead? Where do you hedge when you should commit? These are the places where polarity is leaking away. Each time you reclaim your natural direction, you strengthen the pole, and the charge between you and women increases proportionally. The fifth law takes us deeper still, into the shadow territory that Jung mapped with such care. Because full masculine presence requires integrating parts of yourself that society has asked you to deny. Jung made his most dangerous discovery when he descended into his own unconscious. There he found what he named the shadow, the part of the psyche that contains everything we have rejected about ourselves. Everything we were told was unacceptable. Everything we pushed into darkness so we could be loved. The shadow does not disappear when we ignore it. It grows stronger. It leaks out in uncontrolled ways. And crucially for attraction, it holds exactly the qualities that create magnetic presence. The fifth law is this: the man who integrates his shadow possesses a depth and power that the nice guy can never match. Consider what ends up in the shadow of most men raised in modern culture: aggression, sexuality, ambition, dominance, the drive to compete and win, the capacity for anger, the desire to possess. These are not evil qualities. They are human qualities, necessary qualities. But society has asked men to disown them, to become tame, predictable, safe. The result is a generation of men who have lost access to their own vitality. They are pleasant, they are harmless, and they are invisible to women. Nietzsche raged against this taming of the human spirit. He saw Christianity and modern morality as forces that weakened humanity by condemning its natural drives. The will to power, he argued, is fundamental to all life. Deny it, and you deny life itself. This is not an endorsement of cruelty. It is a recognition that strength, properly channeled, is a virtue. A man who has access to his aggression but chooses restraint is far more attractive than a man who has no aggression to restrain. Women sense this difference instantly. The nice guy who has never owned his shadow appears weak. His niceness seems like a strategy rather than a choice. He is kind because he lacks the capacity to be otherwise. And this is not attractive. The man who has integrated his shadow appears powerful. His kindness is a gift he chooses to give. His restraint suggests force held in reserve. When he is gentle, it means something because he could be otherwise. Robert Greene wrote about the importance of showing a glimpse of the serpent beneath. Not cruelty, not abuse, but a hint that there is more to you than the pleasant surface. A suggestion of depths that could be dangerous if provoked. This is what Machiavelli understood when he wrote that men are driven by two main impulses, fear and love. And the wise prince inspires both. In attraction, this translates to a specific dynamic. She needs to feel safe with you, but she also needs to sense that you are not entirely safe, that there is something untamed beneath your civilized exterior. This is not performed. It cannot be faked. It comes from actually reclaiming the parts of yourself you have disowned. What qualities were you taught to suppress? Where do you censor yourself to be acceptable? What impulses do you hide because they seem too dark? These are the territories where your power is buried. Jung taught that shadow work involves confronting these rejected aspects without judgment, not acting them out recklessly, but acknowledging them, owning them, integrating them into conscious awareness. The man who does this work becomes whole, and wholeness is magnetic. Consider the archetype of the dark romantic hero that appears throughout literature. He is not entirely good. He has edges. He has done things. He carries mystery and danger. Yet women are drawn to him with a force they cannot explain. This archetype speaks to something real. The fully tamed man does not activate female desire. Something in the feminine psyche seeks the man who has mastered himself precisely because he has something to master. Hobbes wrote that the state of nature is war, that beneath civilization's thin veneer, humans remain competitive, acquisitive, driven by appetite. The man who denies this nature in himself becomes less than whole. The man who acknowledges it, who integrates it, who channels it toward worthy aims becomes formidable. Here is the practical truth. You cannot attract with your darkness if you are not in contact with your darkness. And you cannot be in contact with your darkness if you have spent your life running from it. The work is internal. It happens in confrontation with your own rejected parts. It happens when you stop apologizing for being a man with masculine drives. It happens when you reclaim the parts of yourself that society told you were unacceptable. This does not mean becoming cruel or abusive. It means becoming complete. The completed man can be fierce and tender, dominant and caring, ambitious and generous. He holds the opposites within himself. And this internal complexity makes him fascinating to women in a way that the one-dimensional nice guy can never be. Plato wrote about the charioteer who must control two horses, one light, one dark. Mastery requires directing both. The man who has only the light horse lacks the energy of the dark one. He moves through the world with diminished power. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your untapped reserve. Integrate it, and you access a level of presence that most men never discover. The final segment brings everything together. Because these laws do not work in isolation, they form a system. And when you embody the system fully, you become something rare. We have traveled through territory that most men refuse to enter. We have looked at truths that challenge comfortable assumptions. Now it is time to bring these threads together into a coherent pattern. The 5 laws work as a system because they address different dimensions of the same truth. The first law reminds you that value is created through scarcity. Do not give yourself away cheaply. Do not make yourself infinitely available. Maintain the space that allows desire to breathe. The second law establishes the foundation of emotional sovereignty. Master yourself before seeking to attract anyone else. Your stability is the platform upon which everything else is built. The third law reveals the power of mystery. What you withhold creates more fascination than what you reveal. Leave room for her imagination to work. The fourth law addresses polarity. Embrace your masculine essence without apology. The charge between masculine and feminine is the electricity of attraction. The fifth law points to the shadow. Integrate the parts of yourself you have rejected. Wholeness is magnetic in a way that pleasant incompleteness can never be. Together, these laws create a portrait of the man who naturally draws women toward him. He is valuable because he is not desperately seeking value from others. He is stable because his foundation is internal rather than dependent on external validation. He is fascinating because depth lies beneath his surface. He is powerful because he has not amputated his masculine nature. He is whole because he has reclaimed what he rejected. This man does not use techniques. He does not memorize lines. He does not perform a character. He simply is what he is. And what he is attractive. Albert Ellis, the father of rational therapy, argued that most human suffering comes from irrational beliefs. The belief that we must be approved of. The belief that we must achieve certain outcomes to be worthwhile. The belief that external circumstances control our happiness. The irresistible man has freed himself from these beliefs. He does not need a woman's approval to feel valuable. He does not need a specific outcome to feel successful. His happiness comes from within, which paradoxically makes others want to share in it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The man who has done this internal work radiates something that cannot be faked. He carries an ease that others sense and are drawn to. He is not striving because he has already arrived. Not at a destination, but at himself. Here is what separates this from ordinary self-improvement advice. Most advice tells you to do things. Say this. Act this way. Follow these steps. But doing creates performance. And performance is eventually detected. The laws we have explored tell you to become something. Not to act unattainable, but to become genuinely fulfilled. Not to pretend emotional stability, but to develop it. Not to manufacture mystery, but to possess actual depth. This is harder. It takes longer. But the results cannot be replicated by tricks. Machiavelli observed that fortune favors those who prepare. Opportunity comes to everyone, but only the prepared can seize it. The man who has done the inner work is prepared for opportunity in a way the performer never is. When you have genuinely developed these qualities, you do not worry about saying the right thing. You do not stress about making the right impression. You trust that who you are is enough because you have made yourself enough. This is the brutal truth that the title promised. Attraction is not a technique. It is an embodied state of being. The men who succeed are not those who have learned the most tricks. They are those who have done the deepest work on themselves. Schopenhauer knew this when he wrote that character is destiny. You cannot escape who you are, but you can shape who you become. The question is whether you will do the work. Will you cultivate genuine self-sufficiency, or will you continue seeking completion from others? Will you master your emotions, or will you remain at their mercy? Will you develop real depth, or will you stay on the surface, hoping no one notices? Will you reclaim your masculine power, or will you keep apologizing for it? Will you integrate your shadow, or will you remain a pleasant fragment of what you could be? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the actual choices that determine whether you become irresistible or remain invisible. The laws we have discussed are ancient. Philosophers understood them centuries ago, but understanding is not enough. Knowledge without implementation is merely entertainment. The path forward is clear. Not easy, but clear. Begin with one law, the one that challenges you most, the one where you are weakest. Work on it until it becomes part of you. Then move to the next. This is not a project that ends. It is a way of living, a continuous refinement of self that makes you more valuable with each passing year. The men who commit to this path find that attraction becomes effortless, not because they have learned to manipulate, but because they have become worthy of what they desire. That is the brutal truth. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. Become the man worth choosing, and you will be chosen. This is the shadow mind. Until next time, remember that the darkness you fear holds the power you seek. Do not run from it. Walk through it.